Tonight on PBS News Weekend, its majesty restored, Notre Dame reopens 5 years after fire devastated the 12th century cathedral, with world leaders, including President-elect Trump, in attendance. Then, with drunk driving accidents expected to spike during the holiday season, we look at what lowering the legal limit could do for safety, and how a family of North Carolina Christmas tree farmers overcame Hurricane Helene's destruction to get trees to market and one to the White House.
This year, it's extra special for the fact that it's coming from our area that was so heavily devastated, and that we can send a Christmas tree to the White House to represent Western North Carolina as a gift to the people.
Major funding for PBS News Weekend has been provided by and with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. And friends of the NewsHour. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm John Yang. The embers of Notre Dame Cathedral were still smoldering in April 2019 when French President Emmanuel Macron vowed to rebuild the centuries-old Gothic monument to be more beautiful than before and to do it in 5 years. That struck some as wildly unrealistic. But today, 5.5 years and $900 million later, Macron's promise has been fulfilled. Against the skyline of Paris, the Notre Dame Cathedral has risen from the ashes. Its official reopening marked by Paris Archbishop Laurent Ulrich knocking on the once shuttered doors. Inside, led by French President Emmanuel Macron, dignitaries and clergy rose to applaud the hundreds of Paris firefighters who fought for hours to douse the flames.
Je me tiens devant vous.
I am here before you, before we begin the Mass, to tell you of the gratitude of the French nation, gratitude for all those who saved, helped, and rebuilt Our Lady of Paris, Notre Dame de Paris.
For nearly 900 years it had survived the French Revolution, the Franco-Prussian War, and World War II, only to be devastated in April 2019 by a massive fire. The roof went up in flames and the spire toppled, nearly destroying the main bell towers. Outside the incinerated landmark, stunned onlookers sang hymns. Reconstruction began almost immediately. 2,000 craftspeople from around the world worked on the project, battling COVID-19 restrictions and toxic lead dust left by the fire. Dozens of world leaders, diplomats, and celebrities attended the celebration of the monument's rebirth. President Biden didn't attend, citing an unspecified scheduling conflict, and sent First Lady Jill Biden in his place. Macron personally invited President-elect Trump, who made his first overseas trip since the election. For Mr. Trump, it was a high-profile return to the global spotlight and an opportunity for face-to-face meetings with Macron and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. So today was more than just a celebration of the cathedral's restoration. It was also President-elect Trump's return to the world stage. Heather Conley is a senior advisor to the German Marshall Fund. She was Deputy Secretary of State for European Affairs in the George W. Bush administration. So Heather, we had the very unusual sight today in Paris. The current president of the United States was not there. The president-elect was there, and he met with the French president and the president of Ukraine. What do you make of that?
Yes, John. I mean, it's really extraordinary to have a president-elect really beginning to take the approaches of state, conducting foreign policy while we already have a different administration in place. So these are extraordinary times, and certainly President-elect Trump is taking advantage of this moment and the world's focus on the reopening and restoration of Notre Dame to begin that important diplomacy.
Now, we're told that French President Macron really lobbied the president-elect to go, that he called him personally. Why was it so important to Macron that Mr. Trump show up?
Well, President Macron from President Trump's first administration knows that President Trump likes pomp, circumstance. He gave it to him in volumes in the first term with the Bastille Day, special ceremonies, restaurant tours. So he knew this was an opportunity. President Macron also wanted to be the first European leader to engage with President elect Trump, to shape his views, particularly on the war in Ukraine, also as events are rapidly unfolding in the Middle East. So this was a real coup for President Macron to have one-on-one time with the president-elect and then to bring President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky together in a conversation. This was really important. So it paid off. And it's great because President Macron has really had a tough week domestically, and he pulled a great coup off today.
Talk about the president's first term. Of course, we know that his affinity for Russian President Putin, his antipathy toward NATO, and he's threatening tariffs on EU products. How is Europe approaching this, or how are they viewing this second Trump administration?
Well, the good news is the European leaders are not surprised. They were really scrambling in 2017. They didn't have the connections into the Trump administration or his closest advisors. They have been working this for several months, meeting with advisors, making those connections. And it is very, very important when our European allies rely on America's security. Europe is America's largest trade and investment partner. It is really important to shape those policies. So they've really begun to take that approach. They have scenarios for everything. They have scenarios to, try to not have those tariffs be imposed by an incoming Trump administration, offering some carrots, some incentives. But our European allies are also quite prepared if we go down a tariff road to remind us that painful tariffs can go both ways, and it will certainly impact the American economy.
Are there signs that the European leaders have learned lessons or learned how to deal with Mr. Trump from the first administration?
Yes, they certainly have. They understand personal relationships are incredibly important. They know to make sure that they are constantly reaching out to Mr. Trump, to his closest advisors to help shape policies. And they know Mr. Trump is disruptive. He may say and shape a policy one day, he may contradict himself in a 24-hour period. And so they are constantly trying to shape a more positive policy outcome. And they're reminding Mr. Trump that, should Ukraine fail, should NATO fail, that is actually a massive failure for him, for his administration. So he wants to project peace through strength. Strength is our closest relationship with our NATO allies.
The political landscape, as you referred to earlier, is in Europe is very different than in the first Trump administration. Germany's Angela Merkel is gone. Moderate leaders being pressed by populists on the right. How is that going to affect European relations with the next Trump administration?
Yes, I mean, we know the president-elect likes to have those one-on-one relationships. And we know he, in addition to seeing President Macron with the Notre Dame ceremony, he's also seeing the Italian Prime Minister Meloni. This is a different political landscape in Europe. You do have more right, center-right leaders. And certainly you have very close allies in Europe like Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. So he has a political landscape which may be more suited to those issues, but those same allies want a strong America engaged in security, in growing trade and investment. They don't want to see an isolationist America. They certainly don't want to see the United States imposing tariffs and harming both of our economies on both sides of the Atlantic.
Heather Connolly, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Elsewhere in the Middle East, as pressure mounts on Israel and Hamas to reach a ceasefire deal in Gaza, Hamas released a new video of a young Israeli hostage. In the video, Matan Zonaker said he's been held in captivity for more than 420 days. He also blamed the Israeli government for neglecting the hostages. The 25-year-old's mother later spoke at a hostage family's protest in Tel Aviv to urge a ceasefire. She said that while her son is held captive, she's living in hell.
My Matan, my life, I miss you so much and worry about you. If you can hear me, hold on. Know that we are not stopping for a moment and we will continue to fight.
The video comes as President-elect Trump's Middle East envoy traveled to Qatar this weekend to push for a ceasefire. Mr. Trump has said he wants a deal done before he takes office. In Gaza, at least 34 people were killed when an Israeli airstrike hit a home in Gaza City. Health officials say at least 4 women are among the dead. The IDF didn't comment, but in the past they blamed Hamas for using civilians as shields. In Syria, opposition fighters have reached the suburbs of the capital, Damascus. Rebels have been pushing through the country in recent days, taking control of major cities as they go. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has deployed additional troops to defend Damascus, and his government has denied reports that he's fled the country. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol is staying in office for now. Lawmakers in the ruling party boycotted an impeachment vote in parliament to prevent a necessary quorum. Hours earlier, Yoon went on television to apologize for imposing martial law and said that if he was allowed to stay in office, he wouldn't do it again. After the impeachment vote failed, tens of thousands of people demanding his ouster took to the streets. The opposition party says it'll try again to impeach him in a matter of days. Veterans and current service members gathered in Hawaii today to honor those killed at Pearl Harbor 83 years ago today. The ceremony at the Pearl Harbor National Memorial marked the massive Japanese surprise attack that destroyed or damaged nearly 20 U.S. ships and propelled the United States into World War II. Nearly 2,500 military personnel and civilians died that day, and more than 1,000 others were injured. Up next on PBS News Weekend, is it time for states to lower the alcohol driving limit? And how a North Carolina Christmas tree farm overcame the destruction of Hurricane Helene.
This is PBS News Weekend from the David M. Rubenstein studio at WETA in Washington, home of the PBS NewsHour, weeknights on PBS.
The holiday season means holiday parties, and that raises concerns about driving after having too much to drink. According to National Highway Traffic Safety Administration data, drunk driving crashes are as much as 40% higher between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day than they are the rest of the year. In 2000, Congress effectively set what's become the nationwide legal blood alcohol limit for drunk driving. It's higher than it is around the world, and advocates say lowering it would reduce U.S. fatal car crashes. James Fell is a principal research scientist at NORC at the University of Chicago, which is a social research organization. Mr. Fell, you've been studying impaired driving for about 50 years now, I think.
A little over 50.
What has drunk driving done over that period? Has it gone up? Has it gone down?
Well, it went down between 1982 and 1997 when a lot of laws were being passed. We lowered the limit to .08. We had administrative license revocation, things like that. It worked. But then in 97, we hit a plateau. And now it's gone up during the pandemic. I mean, I never would have thought that because, you figure the travel is lower and the fatalities would go down, but it went up. It went up in 2020, 21, and 22. 23, it looks like it's leveling off now. But there's been an increase in impaired driving, and it's mainly due to lack of enforcement.
Now, the legal limit in the United States, and most of the states in the United States, is 0.08 blood alcohol content.
Right.
In most of the rest of the world, it's 0.05. How did that come about? How did the U.S. limit come about, and how did the difference come about?
Actually, the limit back in the 50s and 60s was 0.15. That's what the American Medical Association recommended. So we were high for a while. Then we lowered it to 0.10. Then in the 1980s, beginning in 83, states started on their own, started lowering it to 0.08. And then there was the federal sanction, the incentive for all the states to do that.
And that sanction was the Congress said they couldn't get federal highway money
Right.
unless it was
a percentage,
a
percentage of the money.
So 0.08 and 0.05, I think a lot of people hear those numbers, but they don't really know what it means. I don't know what it means.
Right.
Can you quantify it into how many drinks the average person would have, or what level of impairment at each level?
Everybody's different, and it doesn't work for everybody. But in general, after we've done the studies, 0.05 would be a 170-pound male would have to have 4 drinks in 2 hours on an empty stomach to exceed 0.05. A 137-pound female would need 3 drinks over 2 hours on an empty stomach. Now, if you're eating, your blood alcohol is lower because it absorbs some of the alcohol. If you're at a party and you're not eating and you drink over a 2-hour period, don't exceed those, because that's going to be illegal, hopefully, from every state soon.
The advocates who want to lower it in the United States, there's actually a real-world example of the effects of that. Utah, tell us about that.
Utah, just amazing. Utah starts out with the lowest drunk driving rate in the nation. When I saw that they were going to go to 05, I thought, well, great, but we're not going to see much of an effect because they're low to begin with. In the first year of that law, a 20% decrease in their traffic fatality rate. And the rest of the nation, the other 49 states, had a decrease of 5.6%. And people said that they changed their behavior. They heard about the law. Obviously, it was publicized. And they said they changed their behavior. They used alternative transportation.
So with those results, lowering it is backed by the National Transportation Safety Board, by advocacy groups like
Every
Mothers
public
Against...
health.
So why hasn't it happened?
I don't know why it's not happening. It's been introduced in about 10 states. It only passed in Utah. The science behind it is very strong. 63% of the public supports lowering it to 0.05, and it won't cost the state a thing. And in the U.S., that would mean saving 1,800 lives a year if all states went to 0.05.
Are there other ways to address drunk driving other than bringing the blood alcohol limit down?
Sure. There are several things that work. The enforcement strategy using sobriety checkpoints, for example, where the police stop every car or every other car, and they just talk to the driver, and if they smell alcohol or notice the driver slurring his words or whatever, they pull him over and give him a field test. That is a big general deterrent. People do not want to get caught in a checkpoint. It's very difficult to get police to do them frequently, though. They have to be done at least once a week to have a big effect. Another one is alcohol ignition interlocks for convicted offenders. That prevents repeating the offense. They won't be able to drink and drive. They have to blow into a breathalyzer, and if they have pretty much any positive alcohol, the car won't start. So that's very effective also.
James Fell, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Hurricane Helene's path of destruction in the mountains of North Carolina devastated one of the region's biggest industries, Christmas tree farming. Allie Rogan has the story of one family operation that overcame obstacles to get its crop to market, including one special tree that ended up in a special white house.
It has a great color. I think it's lush, and it's a nice looking tree.
Standing 20 feet tall and 12 feet wide, this Fraser fir tree grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains on the Cartner family farm.
Mom and Dad started it in the 50s. Dad and some other pioneers searched out Christmas trees as an alternative, better cash crop.
Trees like this take a generation to grow, destined to be cut down. On this 500-acre farm that Sam Cartner runs with his brothers, it's always bittersweet.
It does strike a chord after you've harvested the trees and all you see are stumps. You have to stop and remember what that tree's symbolizing and what it's doing. That tree is going to a family where they can experience family time and joy. They can have faith, hope, and love.
This year, faith, hope, and love were all some neighbors had left after Hurricane Helene hit.
The first time in my lifetime that I have seen mudslides on the farm or any farms. We've lost about 6,000 trees across our farm, and it looks just like those areas over there. That may be about 3,000 to 4,000 in that one spot.
Barren hillsides show where saplings should be growing, but it wasn't just trees that were lost. So too were lives and livelihoods.
Everyone's heard about all the damage and devastation and horrific events, and we've just experienced such great generosity from people all over the United States that have given supplies and water and their time to come in and help strangers they didn't even know.
I think that's been very, very difficult for a lot of these farmers.
Jacob Biba is a reporter for the Asheville Citizen-Times and covered Hurricane Helene's impact on the local economy.
There's pretty much two industries in those areas. It's the Christmas tree industry and then the tourism industry. And Helene devastated the tourism industry. So being able to fall back and rely on Christmas trees is huge for them.
One of the main problems after the storm was getting around. The roads were washed out, making it hard to transport the trees to loading areas. But the farmers and state and county officials went to work.
It really, just the spirit they've shown coming together to get their roads fixed up and get the trees out has been pretty amazing to witness.
We harvest between 4 and 5 million Christmas trees annually.
North Carolina is the second largest producer of Christmas trees in the country, selling $144 million worth of Fraser firs in 2022. Jennifer Green runs the state's Christmas Tree Association.
The hurricane hit 4 weeks before harvest season. It made an already stressful time even much more stressful. It's going to be a long time before Western North Carolina is back and fully operational. But, it's going to happen. And honestly, it's happening a lot quicker than I thought in a lot of places. People are very community oriented. And I think that the storm has really brought our communities together.
And now that community pride is taking up most of the Blue Room at the White House. Sam Kartner's 20-foot-tall Fraser fir won the National Christmas Tree Competition.
They were insistent that we find a tree that was about 19 to 20 feet tall, no wider than 12 feet. That was so that they take out the chandelier in the Blue Room, and the tree has to reach up to the chandelier. That's where they bring the electricity from to light the lights.
This year, it's extra special. For the fact that it's coming from our area that was so heavily devastated, and that we can send a Christmas tree to the White House to represent Western North Carolina as a gift to the people.
This is the 16th tree from North Carolina to make it to the White House.
We want it to represent all these growers and all these families in the mountains of North Carolina. It's not about the Kartners. It's about what the Christmas tree represents, all those good things.
After this hurricane season, good things made all the better.
I'd say that's perfect.
For PBS News Weekend, I'm Allie Rogan.
And that is PBS News Weekend for this Saturday. I'm John Yang. Thanks for joining us. See you tomorrow.
Major funding for PBS News Weekend has been provided by...
In 1995, two friends set out to make wireless coverage accessible to all. With no long-term contracts, nationwide coverage, and 100% U.S.-based customer support. Consumer Cellular. Freedom calls.
And with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.